Okay.
All right, hello everyone. This week on Fiction Fanatics, we're thrilled to welcome the incredible Caitlin Starling, the best-selling author of The Death of Jane Lawrence, The Luminous Dead, and The Starving Saints. She is known for her genre-bending, atmospheric, deeply psychological storytelling, and we cannot wait to talk to her about how she creates such immersive and shadowy worlds. Caitlin, thank you so much for being on our show today.
Thank you for inviting
Yay.
me.
Welcome,
Yay.
welcome.
Welcome.
We are so happy to have you on. I've been wrecking your books ever since I discovered them. So I guess to get the episode started, could you just tell us basically how you got into writing, how you fell in love with storytelling?
So the first thing that I remember, right, the first story I remember writing, I was 8 years old and I was writing Sailor Moon fan fiction.
Oh my
Yes.
God.
And
Incredible.
like my childhood therapist pulled it out, her copy out when I was like seeing her again when I was 17 or 18, and she's like, "Look what I still have." And um the grammar was all perfect, so that's impressive for an 8-year-old. Beyond that, it wasn't very good. But I kept writing. I did National Novel Writing Month back when it was still shiny and new and not problematic. And I also did a lot of online role playing. I think getting onto Neopets as a 10-year-old lying about my age probably was very formative. I got into some role playing like guilds and developed a love of collaborative storytelling, that sort of thing. So between National Novel Writing Month and role playing with various people on the internet, um, I ended up logging like a lot of words before I ever thought about writing a book seriously. All my National Novel Writing Month books, I was like, I'm 15. As much as I want to be the I can't remember her name, but there was a book that came out when I was like 12, 13 that had been published. It had been written by a 13-year-old. It was like a little vampire
Oh.
novel. Maybe called In the Forest of the Night. I can't remember.
Mm,
But I wanted
Wow.
to be her.
yeah.
And I got past that age and I wasn't her. And I was like, okay, cool. I just will take my time then. And then I got to college and went, there is no way that I will ever be able to write professionally. The odds of that happening are so low that I should just study
Mm.
anthropology instead. I did psychology first and then various drama happened and I switched to anthropology. But at no point did I take an English class or a writing class. And I just kept writing for myself, did fan fiction, more role playing, that sort of stuff. And finally, a couple years out of college, I, for spite reasons, decided to see if I could still write original fiction. And I wrote what ended up becoming The Luminous Dead. And since then, I have not been able to get off of Mr. Bones's wild ride.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's so cool when authors we spoke to another one not even like the other day, and she had various like careers and other things she did too before she found her
Mhm.
writing. I think that's cool that you still found your way back to it after
Yeah.
doing
I
it so
Different
I
young.
ways.
also I like to think that it adds some depth too. I think that if I had just studied writing, I personally would have been the sort of person who was just echoing what I had read before,
Hmm.
as opposed to like studying anthropology. I took a course called like the archaeology of death and various mortuary systems and sort of things like that. And it's like, okay, and now there's a little element of that that gets ends up in all of my books.
Hmm.
Um, just sort of magpieing cool little details about various parts of the world.
Yeah.
That's
That's
cool.
very cool.
And
It is
oh,
called In the Forest of the Night. Her name is Amelia Atwater Rhodes. So you were
Yes,
right.
thank
Yeah.
you.
wow.
Yeah. Wow.
I
But
wonder if
like
she's is she still writing? Does it?
I learned like she wrote story. Yes.
it says that she has it's a whole series. It started in 1999. And it's a whole vampire series. I don't know if she has other books. Let's see. Um let's see. Yeah.
I feel like there'd be so
Yeah.
much pressure to keep
She has
writing if
other
you.
like trilogies, other series.
Oh, neat.
That's
Cool.
cool.
Yeah. All the way up until 2016 at least. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Good for her.
Yeah.
She was your part of your inspiration.
Mhm. It's also cool that you used to write fan fiction. That's actually how we started this podcast, like
Hmm.
way when it first started, is we were called Fiction Fanatics because we read so much fan fiction, and then we ended up
Mhm.
just switching to like published books and stuff. But
So
Yeah.
I wrote The Starving Saints, and then I immediately switched to writing a bunch of Hannibal fan fiction for
let
like
me,
the next
here we
year or
go.
so. For the
Stacy's gonna
next
be so happy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you guys are soulmates.
We are.
Good.
I have a
Stacey
Hannibal
is
tattoo. I love it so
obsessed
much.
with
I am planning at some point I am going to get the Will Graham clock somewhere.
Mhm. I
she's
have the teacup that looks broken on my arm, and then it says, "I gave you a rare gift."
Oh.
I love it so much. I don't shut up about it. I've been trying to get Chanel, at least she started it,
yeah, I
them to
watched the
watch
first
Hannibal.
season. I need to watch the second season.
Yes.
It's a lot.
Yeah,
So
it gets weirder as it goes on.
Hmm.
yeah. I have to like mentally be in the right space to watch.
So it was 2020 and it was on Netflix and I was like, "Oh, I had never finished watching this when it was airing. I should watch it." And then I was completely obsessed.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um
Yeah. It's really good.
Yeah.
It's really good, but it's dark. It's so dark and intense. That's what it is. Intense is the right word. So if
Yeah.
anyone loves Hannibal, you're Stacy's best friend.
I like went through this phase that I'm still in where I stopped reading all other fan fiction other than Hannah fan fiction. It's like all I read. And I remember I watched the show because of the friend I told you about who was like, "Oh, read these books." She's obsessed. And she was like, "Oh, you should watch this show." I'm pretty sure I was pregnant with my son. I watched the whole thing. And then, I watched it all the time. He was really like a newborn, so he had no idea what was going on, but it was really good background noise for me personally.
and here
Hey,
I just watched Chicago Med, which sucks. I would go on record as saying like as a fan of medical dramas, that is not the one to
Hmm.
pick. Of course, I'm now very spoiled because The Pit exists.
Oh, the
And The Pit
pit.
season 2 is what,
yeah.
this week? I think it started this
Friday.
week.
I think it's Friday. And it got 100% Rotten Tomatoes score. I just saw it was posted like wherever it premiered or however that works. It got 100% the second season did for Rotten Tomatoes.
That's crazy.
That
Yeah.
is crazy. I
Yeah.
don't
Yes.
know if we mentioned, and I want to talk about this later when we talk about the Graceview patient, but we're all in the medical field. Like
Yeah.
me, did you
Yeah.
tell her in the
No, I
beginning?
didn't tell her.
Oh,
No, go ahead.
so me and Ashley are nurses, and then Chanel. I don't even know how I would describe your job
I
now.
am a scrub tech
Hmm.
that works in the OR, and then now I am a medical supply rep.
Okay,
Hmm.
So
cool.
I'm a rep. So yeah, but we're all in
Yeah.
the medical field. So
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, we do know medical trauma, real life. We live it in real life.
We love
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I guess to kind of jump back to your writing, did you always know that you'd write horror speculative fiction when you were starting out?
I knew I'd write speculative fiction.
Okay.
Um, in fact, like a couple of my books um, are more like contemporary. They're still speculative, but they're like contemporary settings, and it still feels really awkward that that is true.
Mhm.
It is a quirk of publishing and like a little bit editorial influence and marketability and things like that. On the horror side, I was one of those people who, like, even up till very recently, I claimed that I didn't like horror, or that I was too scared for horror, or like that it, but the more I have talked on podcasts, the more I have uncovered every single time as a like a teenager that I would just seek out horror stuff. And then I just would always be like, well, but I like that. So my brain would say, well, it's not that scary, therefore it's not horror. But you don't like I think largely when I was a teenager, it was when Saw was really big.
Mhm.
Oof.
And I did not like Saw. I don't like that
Mm-mm.
kind of horror movie.
Mm-mm.
And so I thought I didn't like horror, but I was
Yeah.
there, I was obsessed with Jane Eyre as a kid, which entry into gothic horror. I loved the movie The Cell with Jennifer
Mhm.
Lopez.
Mhm.
Um, I made my dad rent a used VHS or buy a used VHS copy of The Ring from Blockbuster.
Mm.
And then he wouldn't watch it with me. And I was really upset. And he's like, I told you when you picked this up, you had to do this. I was like 12. I was traumatizing myself in the living room, running over to his office every couple of minutes, being like, you have to come see this. And my dad was like, nope.
Dude, The Ring is
Uh,
scary, and I watched it older, like old, and I thought it was scary. So it was 12. Yeah, I love how he's like, "You're gonna do this journey by yourself."
yeah. So, and so it's always been part of my background, but for like, I would keep gatekeeping myself out of it, being like, well, I'm not a real horror person. But
Hmm.
I set out to write The Luminous Dead. I had been writing for a fandom for a game called Dishonored, which is sort of a dark, gritty, bordering into horror. And I had been writing more horror leading things in that space. Like I did a weird seance haunting thing. There's a bunch of other stuff. And it is a very natural way for me to add tension. And a lot of my ideas tend towards very specific, very dark things
Hmm.
where even if I don't think they're scary, readers tend to find them at least very unsettling. Um, and so it sort of happened organically, and I've been playing catch up ever since of like recognizing that that's what I've been doing and doing it more intentionally and reading more, consuming more media in the space and all that.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's cool. It's interesting too because personally, and I know Ashley's the same way. I'm guessing Chanel, you are too. I don't usually like any kind of like gory horror, like when you think of Saw and stuff. And so I really didn't think I liked scary things either. And then when I got older, I realized, oh, like I like the horror of like Hannibal and like different kinds of horror. And like I always think of like Crimson Peak. I think that's like a
Mm-hmm.
really great dark, like gothic kind of thing. So I think there's a lot of different facets of horror. But I think of the books I've read of yours that you do horror pretty well, in my humble opinion, really
Well, thank
well.
you.
Hmm.
And the other thing is like even when I wasn't seeking out like fictional horror, I was one of those kids. I mean, to this day, I still am. Um, I get into weird corners of the internet.
Hmm.
Um, I at least occasionally would go to rotten.com. Like I was kind of like always trying to find things that made me a certain amount of uncomfortable
Hmm.
and exploring that. I have read like I never got into I was never like a real true crime person, but
Hmm.
like very adjacent to that of just sort of like I say that, but I listened to the last podcast on the left, so I don't think I can really say that. But
Yeah.
like I don't read a lot of true crime books, but I do read like descriptions of the crime of various violent crimes on Wikipedia or whatever else.
Hmm.
Um, Specifically being like, okay, how is this making me feel right now? How does this impact my understanding of the rest of humanity?
Hmm.
Yeah,
And like
yeah.
also reading about, war crimes and also and terrible stuff like that. And then I'll just yeah, so like that was definitely always there.
Hmm.
And I think that that also falls under horror even when it's nonfiction.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I agree. I listen to not so much right now, but I listen to a lot of like true crime podcasts. I listen to like Last Podcast on the Left and like Morbid and stuff. And it is crazy to listen to such like scary things and be like, well, this is real. Like this really happened compared to like when you read these horror
Book.
books and it's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
not
For
trying to
real.
me,
like trying to imagine what it would feel like to be in XYZ situation
Hmm.
and like
mhm.
realizing somebody was and then
Yeah.
they died.
And then it happened. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, like, because I'm like Stacy, I'm into true crime podcasts, but sometimes it can get really dark and like
Hmm.
constantly like watching Dateline all the time. But there's a podcast I listen to called Criminal, where it's not just murder. It's like all types of crime, like almost
Hmm.
specifically like weird crimes. It seems like kind of like what you're kind of describing, Caitlin, where it's like there'll be like I specifically remember one where it was like this guy was like super into plants. I don't know what that's called when you're like whatever, a gardener or something. And he would like steal exotic plants and like got away with it for a long time. And it was just like in his working into his mind, but it was like a crime to steal this like really rare plant. And like, but he was like a criminal technically. Like he got
Yeah.
charged with this. And so anyway, it's like you said, it is like a weird corner of the world to be like in this
Hmm.
guy's mind of like, well, he has this niche, but he's going out of his way instead of killing someone, he's digging up someone's lawn. Like,
Really rare plants.
yeah, and selling them on the black market. So yeah, anyway.
So I know we have talked about some of this stuff that you have read, like Jane Eyre and some video games and stuff, but there are there any other like media influences that really help shape how you write, you think, or inspired you for some things?
The anime Revolutionary Girl Utena,
Oh,
for sure.
I need to look this
Watch.
up. I've not heard of it.
I haven't either.
Oh my God. Okay. So the basic premise, and it's one of those anime that have the very um very rigid structures in most of the episodes where it's, there's an introductory thing, and then there's a transformation sequence, and then there's a fight, and then it's over, and then rinse and repeat over and over again for the
Hmm.
season. But it starts kind of like with Hannibal, where it starts as a police procedural and then
Hmm.
gets progressively weirder and stops being a police procedural at a certain point.
Hmm.
Utena follows kind of a similar path, but it is about a
Ooh.
girl who, when she's a child, her parents die and she wants to die too, and a prince appears and tells her that, like, if she lives with bravery and honesty and whatever else, that one day, um they'll meet again or whatever. But she takes away from that she's going to become a prince because the prince was so cool and she wants to be a prince
Mm.
now. And this is one of, like, the original yuri gender bending anime out
Mm.
there. Not like I think Rosa Versailles is before this, but and though she eventually ends up at this private school and gets embroiled in a system of sword duels that the student council is a part of for control of a girl they call the Rose Bride, who has to, like, basically be um, a servant to whoever has won her.
Mm.
Um, and she accidentally, sort of just trying to, like, intervene and protect this girl, ends up, like, in charge of her, and it gets weirder from there. Um, and gets deeply psychological and mythological, and but also very fun. She gets to pull a sword, like a magical sword, out of her not girlfriend's chest all the time
Oh,
for
that's
fights.
great. Hmm.
And yeah, it's great. um Also, there's a weird subplot with the head of the student council's little sister, who at one point turns into a cow. She gets better, but she's a cow for a bit. um and yeah, so it's weird. It's like 90s anime, peak 90s
I
anime,
love the best.
and super gender, super
Mm.
queer, um and very aesthetic and
Hmm.
deeply influential.
Hmm.
I in fact, my laptop is currently sitting on my box set. um
Love it.
so there's that. Let's see, also other, like, various anime video game type things in my background. I often, if asked, like, what formative books are in my background, I forget every single book I've ever read. I'm very bad at that.
Yeah.
I also just have a very weird relationship with memory in the past, and it all kind of runs together.
Mm.
But
Hmm.
I would say Utena and Hannibal stand out,
Hmm. Yeah, that's cool.
particularly for Starving Saints. I feel like they are very obvious influences on Starving Saints. Maybe not as much my other books.
Yeah, when uh I love Starving Saints. It's probably one of my favorite books I read. I can't believe I'm saying last year. It doesn't feel like last year. One of my favorite books I read last year, and it is like the vibes are so. It's such a different book, but if people are fans of the Hannibal show, it's like the vibe was just so similar reading it, and so I felt so comfortable like getting into the story. It was yeah, that was cool. Definitely. So how do you think your writing has evolved to now from starting with The Luminous Dead?
I think that I have gotten more confident
Hmm.
in, like, I don't self edit on content as much as I used to. I like to think I'm a better, like, prose writer by now as
Hmm.
well. But who knows? So with my publishing, I have two publishers, or I have three. I have Neon Hemlock, which does my novellas, and it's a really cool small queer press. And then for my novels, I have Harper Voyager, which did The Luminous Dead and Starving Saints, and I have St. Martin's Press, which did my other books. St.
Hmm.
Martin's Press, um, for whatever reason, wants me to do more contemporary set horror, wants me to do, like, kind of hide the speculativeness in the pitch or the premise so that it is more appealing, I guess, to, like, a women's fiction reader, which is very funny because all of my books are then speculative from, like, chapter one. So I'm not quite sure how that works out, but it's pushed me to explore different storytelling than I would, I think, if I had just stayed in, like, science fiction fantasy. I don't think that I would have gotten around to writing, say, a first person hospital gothic book if I didn't have that push from St. Martin's Press to come up with ideas that had a more contemporary setting. Same with, I have a book coming out in October called Milk Teeth that is like, what if vampires had to breastfeed? Working through some stuff. I have a 3-year-old child. You can do the math. But it is very much a like, I think I have responded well to that sort of creative push. I know that like a lot of people have very strong feelings about editors or publishers like constraining what authors write.
Mhm.
And sometimes I have been very angry at still at like writing at some of my ideas. So for instance, Starving Saints got passed over a couple times
Mhm.
by St. Martin's Press because it didn't fit the audience that they wanted to, that they saw for me. It was too
Mhm.
weird, as they said on numerous occasions. But we found a place where it wasn't too weird, and now
Mhm.
the two kind of lines are coexisting, and it's okay. They kind of, people drift back and forth between them. They find all the books. It's great.
Mhm.
Um, but like I said, I have had to stretch creatively in other ways that I probably wouldn't have done on my own.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So like because like I guess now that you have like these two publishers, like you know, like you have this like let's say this new book, like you said, coming out in October. You know exactly like which publisher to bring it to because they kind of, like you said, want different things. Like if you
Yeah,
have an idea, you're like, this would go well for this audience, this publisher, this would, is that kind of um how you know where to go creatively in the future with your editing
yeah,
and stuff?
pretty much. I haven't.
Mhm.
It hasn't come up at all.
Hmm.
Um, like just because of timing of when various projects sold. Like I don't. I guess maybe I had sold Starving Saints to Voyager when I came up with Milk Teeth. But it was just so obviously, no, this is going to St. Martin's Press. Um, like in a perfect world, I could take either idea to either of them and they would make it work. But
Mhm.
yeah, generally I can tell. Basically, it's if there's a secondary world, that's a Voyager title. If it's our world, it's an SMP title. And like the only weird like outlier in that is Death of Jane Lawrence, but it appears like it's in our world.
Mhm.
And even though it's technically secondary world, it like that's kind of, there's editorial change in there too. Like my editor changed between certain books. Um, but more or less, yeah, if it feels like our world, it's St. Martin's Press. If it feels like a different world, or if it has like obvious magic on the page,
Mhm.
it's
Yeah,
Voyager.
that's so interesting. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Hmm.
So with the Graceview patient, what sparked that story or inspired you?
So when my kid was born, he decided to show up a month early.
Mm.
There was lots of excitement. I got to have 2 blood transfusions. He was in the NICU for a while. It all turned out fine. And I
Mhm.
actually like the whole experience was surprisingly positive.
Mm.
Um, I had really, really great nursing care, and
Mm.
so did my kid. And I also have a fair amount of medical familiarity, both from like reading doctors' memoirs and nurses' memoirs and things like that. And then when I was growing up, my mom had AIDS. And so we were at clinics and at the hospital quite a bit. And for
Mm.
whatever reason, that did not create like a huge aversion to doctors in me when I was a kid, and instead
Mm.
like lifelong fascination sort of thing. So I kind of came out of all of that going, I want to write a book set in a hospital. I do not feel that I could, to my own standards, write a believable book from the perspective of a doctor or a nurse.
Mm.
I don't want them to be the bad guys. Very
Mhm.
importantly, I didn't want to do like a cure for wellness type evil paternalistic doctor, nurse
Mhm.
ratchety type stuff.
Mhm.
Um, so I had to come up with a different option for what the problem was, and I can't say what I came up with because it's deeply spoilery, but it led
Mhm.
to the construction of the whole plot and the whole book. I wrote it to the best of my ability. And then I hired my friend who is a former ER nurse and now a care coordinator to medical fact check everything in the book. And
Mhm.
That's awesome.
Wow.
she was
Mhm.
awesome, and she came up with some things that really not only like became more accurate, but that added elements to the story and to the plot, because she's also a writer. So we just,
Mm-hmm.
mind melded on it. Um, but it was really fun. And I knew from the beginning that I wanted whiteboards being used for evil in the book. And I knew I wanted it to really um, to deal with perception and memory. And there's something that I did in um, The Luminous Dead where at a certain point, so when I first wrote the book, there were just straight up alien monsters in the book. And when we sold it, one of the conditions of selling it was removing those monsters and instead making the book much more about the relationship between the two main characters. And as I was coming up, and to do this, for them to buy it, I had to outline what I was going to do instead so they could judge it based on that. And as I was working on the outline, I was like, okay, so taking away the obvious threat of alien monsters, the problem is people are going to be like, wait, it was all in her head. That's a letdown. Like, that's annoying. And it is still very annoying to some people. I have read some reviews like that, but I was looking at it going, okay, so if that is one of the options, it has to be the worst option. It has to cause problems. It has to be deeply upsetting if it's all in her head on a level within the text. Not a disappointing upsetting, but like oh God, that's terrifying because she's making decisions based on nothing or based on misinterpreting things. And I think I did a decent job of it in The Luminous Dead, but going into Grace Be Patient, I knew that that was the whole point of the book. For people who have not heard of the premise of this book, it is about a woman with a chronic autoimmune condition who signs up for an experimental medical trial, involves being in the hospital for a while they do terrifying things to her immune system, and she's at risk in general. And then it starts to seem like the hospital is haunted. And someone in her program dies, and very fun stuff. And I knew from the beginning that I had to walk this line where, on the one hand, maybe this is all in her head. Maybe it's all medical, medication side effects. Maybe it's ICU delirium. Like, maybe it's none of it's real. Or maybe something really is in the hospital. And both of those have to be terrible options. And I feel like I really got to that in The Grace Be Patient. And that is really like the basis of it. It also does a lot with memory and perception and reliability of your own like narrativization of events, which I also messed with in Last to Leave the Room. I have clearly some narrative hangups that I keep coming back to. But I'm really proud of what I managed to do with The Grace Be Patient. I think that it turned out the way I wanted it to.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil anything. I read that book in like 2 days. I probably could have read it in one day if I, didn't have to work, which ruins a lot of my reading. And I'm
You
no
had your own
expert by any
patience.
means, but I am also, as an ER nurse, when I read it, it is probably, this is not exaggeration, one of the most accurate books I've read personally, where it's so believable. I would have thought that you were like a doctor or nurse reading it. It's so just like one of the characters that's the nurse, just like little things she would do and the way you wrote it, where it didn't feel like it was being written to be like, and she does this, da 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 da. It's just written in very like, well, she has, or I was thinking, oh, maybe, and not taking too personal, it's like, oh, maybe she's had long hospital stays. Like that's how knowledgeable it seemed writing it. So yeah, I was
That's
going to say that
incredible.
it was such a good job. Like you guys would love it. I would tell you to start with that over Starving Saints. I love them both, but
Yeah.
definitely your guys' cup of tea too. But yeah.
Yes. So
Yeah.
yeah, good job to you and your friend.
Yeah, a lot of it was her. A lot of it was, some of it was my hospital stay. Particularly the stuff with the blood transfusion. It was very funny when my friend was writing notes. She was like, "You've had a blood transfusion, haven't you? You got this too accurately
To know.
to know." Although my IV blowing was not with the transfusion; it was prior to the transfusion. It is why I had my transfusion through a hand catheter. Do not recommend that. That
Yeah.
sucks. We had yeah. it was exciting. It also, I'm really glad that I managed to get the accuracy down, because I'm still kicking myself. In Last to Leave the Room, I had to come up with this whole complicated way for the main character to get a hold of an ultrasound machine, without realizing that there exists ultrasound wands you can plug into your phone that have AI guided assistance. And she
Hmm.
was the absolute type of tech person who would have known that and had it. And I'm
Hmm.
kicking myself to this day over it. So I'm glad I caught up on this one.
It like still wakes you up. You're like, I could have done that so much
Yeah,
easier.
I think I was listening to like Glock and Flecken's podcast, and he mentioned like a
Mhm.
phone based POCUS. And I was like, you're kidding me. You're kidding me. This has existed for the entire time this book was being written, and I didn't know about it. But then again, very few people apparently know about it who aren't doing bedside ultrasounds. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
okay.
Hmm.
But this is the kind of thing that keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
That and like in Starving Saints, I was agonizing over this one, how I described a chunk of human body as meat, because I was like, it was comparative to a horse, and I was like, I don't know if I compared it exactly right, because I've never seen this cut of horse next to this cut of human.
Oh.
And no
Hmm.
one on the internet has a drawing for me to scale that
Hmm.
I can check this on.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what my brain's like. That's what it's like to be me.
Yeah. I love it. Was it hard to blend like the horror aspects and the psychological aspects of the Graceview patient and then the actual like medical situation going on too to like blend the two together?
Sometimes, other times it like the enough of the horror bits were based on elements of things that I have experienced that I could just it was more me trying to figure out ways that it could, what could be happening in Meg as the main character, in Meg's
Hmm.
care, that could coincide with those experiences. Like I there is a freaky shower scene with a decidual cast in it,
Hmm.
which is honestly inspired by a miscarriage that I had, just made way, way worse. And then
Yeah.
I had to walk it back and figure out what is going on with her medication regimen that could lead to this. And I very
Mm.
luckily found some fun stuff about like cessation of, I think it's just progesterone birth control in combination with some other stuff has been known to cause decidual uterine decidual casts. I'm like, perfect. I can explain this then.
Hmm.
Other aspects, there's a scene in the Graceview Patient that is told in the form of a nursing progress note.
Hmm.
And that is purely because the chapter right before it was in the original draft, and my friend came back with, Isabel's too good of a nurse to do that. This is something that
Hmm.
would happen in a TV show.
Mm.
Figure something else out. But
Hmm.
I can see it being all in it happening in Meg's head that way, because she's probably watched medical dramas.
Hmm.
And that introduced this level of, okay, so Meg's perception of this event was X, and is the nurse Isabel, her perception of it was Y, and she wrote it down and is making sure Meg sees it so that Meg knows that something's not matching up.
So
Um,
interesting.
Hmm.
yeah, and so, but it was a pretty easy writing experience.
Mm.
I wrote it in, I want to say 6 weeks, the
Wow.
first draft. And part of it was I was going as fast as I could because I expected to have to do major changes based on my friend's feedback. So I just wanted to get the
Hmm.
emotional arc down, get the medical stuff as close as I could on my own without getting too wrapped around the axle on it, because I knew I was going to have help. And I knew that any structural edits that I would need to make, or any detail edits I would need to make, would therefore lead to structural changes probably, just because all the medical stuff was so integral to how
Hmm.
things worked.
Would you ever write another medical hospital-based book?
I would have to have another idea that doesn't, like, I really just don't like making care professionals the bad guys. So
Yeah.
I'd have to find another way to do that without doing the same thing that I did in the Graceview Patient.
Hmm.
um, I think honestly, hospital horror is probably easier coming from people who work in hospitals.
Hmm.
I have talked to some other I have a friend who is a nurse who has told me some very exciting ghost stories from, she's an ICU nurse, and I have heard some terrifying things.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, I bet.
I bet.
Um, so I guess since we're kind of talking about how you were writing that book and it was a quick turnaround, when you are writing, are you more of a like a plotter, planner, or does it just like come to you and you just run with it? How's your writing progress, I guess?
So my writing process used to be I would outline maybe the first third and then start writing. And then I would kind of outline ahead of myself to figure out where I was going to go next. And that's from National Novel Writing Month days, right? Of you're writing it. And I still write very much like I'm doing National Novel Writing Month. I try and kind of keep it to a compressed time period because that's how my brain works best. And also now that I have a kid, it's useful to be like, when I am writing a book, I am not the best parent I am capable of being. So keeping that to as temporal period as possible is usually best. But um, then I, started selling books, and at that point, editors either need a finished book or and for future books they need an outline or at least a synopsis to know. And you're allowed to completely diverge from what you give them as an outline. You just need to show them a book shaped object. Um, and so I have improved my outlining skills quite a bit. Outlining is really useful for writing books quickly. If I know basically what's going to happen every chapter, then I can sit down, write, like I can even skip part of like the beginning or ending of the chapter and just like kind of skip around through the meat of it as much as I can, and then go back and fill in little patchwork holes. And that's how I write now. For Milk Teeth, that involved a Excel sheet with lots of color coding because the vampire who is breastfeeding has 3 nurslings, and they each have a character arc that I had to track, even though they're not POV characters. And so that kind of gave me the structure to work around. They had to stay in the book the whole book. They're kind of the point of the book, even if what I'm interested isn't necessarily like their stories to me are incidental, but they are also like you can't remove them. They're load bearing. So I had to have them there and then weave the rest of the story around it. For Starving Saints, because there are 3 POVs that trade off as fluidly as I can, that was also a lot more color coding, although I did that in Scrivener. But generally speaking, I outline a lot. But my outlines, I will outline out of order. So I will leave gaps with like question marks on a numbered list that I have to come back and figure out later. And I will just do my best to figure it all out before I start. Sometimes, like with Grace View Patient, I had to turn it into a synopsis, not an outline. And in a synopsis, you can yada, yada, yada certain things. And in fact, you have to in order to get it to word count. So then I started writing based on my synopsis and then discovered that I had yada, yada, yada the entire second act. Which luckily I had given myself enough story, like enough tools and enough characters to, I think it took me like 1 or 2 mornings to outline the whole second act and get back on it. But it was humbling to realize I'd forgotten that.
Do you, when you're writing or outlining at least, like, do you give yourself like a certain amount of words a day or like a certain amount of hours you have to write, or do you write every single day? Like, what's your kind of process for how much you need to write?
I generally give myself a target word count per day. Before my kid, that was about 2,000 words a day because National Novel Writing Month pace. Now that I have a kid, it's closer to like 1,200 words a day. I find I can comfortably do. I tend to write in like one burst, usually early in the morning, and then get back to my life for the rest of the day. And with the occasional, if I can swing it, I'll do like a weekend away or something to try and get out a lot more words all at once.
Mhm.
Um, I find that and I write every day when I'm working on a book, even if it's just a little bit, because otherwise I lose momentum.
Mhm.
But when I am not actively drafting a book, I usually don't write. So I'll go months without writing, aside from like writing promotional materials. Um, and that's always been how I've worked pretty much.
So if you're not like on a deadline or in that kind of like book mode, then you're kind of like on a break
Kind
from
of
it.
on a break. Other stuff going on usually,
Mhm.
and like especially if I don't have something super urgent or impending, a book will start showing up in my brain at some point, and I'll be like, "Come on, I'm trying to take a break." But yeah, drafting is very much like it's almost like training for a marathon sort of thing, or I guess running the marathon of like I prep for it, I do it, and then it's over and there's a recovery period.
Mhm.
Although recovery these days is more like doing promotion for a different book.
Right, right. Yeah, going on tour. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet it's busy. And with a 3-year-old now, I'm sure it's like
Yeah.
really busy balancing
Last
it all.
year, last year with 3 books coming out was a mistake.
Mhm.
I will not be doing that again. I am still recovering.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's a lot.
Plus, like with little toddler. Yeah.
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 Yeah. He's at least getting to the point where he can be in the bookstore where I'm doing an event without screaming for me. So that is
That's
progress.
nice.
Screaming
Yeah.
bloody murder.
Growth.
But how cool that he gets to like see you in that. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm really
that's
excited.
cool.
He
Hmm.
loves books and he loves spooky things. So hopefully he won't think I'm too embarrassing when he's like 15.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He'll be like, look
I
at
mean,
this
he'll still
thing
think
my
I'm
mom.
embarrassing, but hopefully not
Yeah.
Yeah.
like egregiously embarrassing.
Yeah.
He'll come to appreciate it at some point.
Um, I love it. Okay, so like during this part of the interview, we like to do like a fun little game. It's pretty much like this or that we'll ask you, and we usually all like kind of chime in and answer with you. It should be
Mhm.
fun. Do you want me to do it, Chanel, or would you like to do
Go
it?
ahead. Yeah,
Okay,
give it a
okay.
pick.
So this one is called Dark and Delicious. I love the title, Ashley. That's so great. Okay, so what would you rather write about? A haunted castle or a cursed forest?
Haunted Castle.
Mm.
Yeah, that's cool.
I say that as I'm about to write like a Cursed Valley sort of book, but you know.
Mhm. And I was just thinking, like, reading the Starving Sands, I was like, well, you write really good castle books too. So really like, yeah. So would you rather have a slow burn dread or a full body panic?
For myself or for a
Yeah,
character.
for you, if you
Oh,
were
yeah.
reading a book.
Yeah.
Or you, both.
Probably the panic. It's more
Okay.
cathartic.
Hmm.
Slow burn dread is just like,
Ooh, they both
yeah, it
sound
just
fun.
there's no way out of it unless you can just somehow forget about it. But I think in the context of this, it would not be you wouldn't be able to ignore it. So
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'll go
yeah.
with the panic.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Is there a third option of like neither?
Neither. You're like, what about just like a comfort read? Um, would you rather have to write about, okay, would you rather have a villain POV or a morally gray heroine
I
to
mean,
write? Would you prefer to write?
I already do morally gray heroines all the time, so I think I have to
Mhm.
say villain just for the
Mhm.
practice for the experience. Although arguably that's what Milk Teeth is.
Oh,
The vampire
Ooh.
novel from the perspective of a
yeah.
vampire. So
Ooh,
Okay.
We're
yeah.
getting it. We're getting it.
Maybe you're both. Um,
Sounds so good.
do you prefer to write plot twist or a tragic reveal?
uh, probably tragic reveal.
Hmm. That's cool.
So
Yeah.
I feel like
Think,
you love a
thinking of
tragic
Death of Jane
reveal.
Lawrence there.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm listening to that right now, by the way. I finally got it on Libby, so it's really good so far.
Oh, you have the audio, so that means you get to experience the disappearing horse.
Whoa, I haven't got there yet.
Oh, you might have
I
already.
think I've heard someone talk about this on Instagram, though. I think that's
It's
why I have the
pretty
audio.
it's pretty early. It's just that one scene there are two horses pulling the carriage, and in a later scene there is only one horse pulling the carriage, and we didn't catch it in edits. We caught it. I caught it because I was reading various parts of it at events, and I don't read the same thing at every event. I like to jump around because I get
Mhm.
bored otherwise. And I read the two scenes out of order. So I read the one horse chapter first, and
Mm.
then this two horse chapter at a different event, and I was like, wait a second. And so the like
Interesting.
paperbacks and stuff have that fixed in it, but the audiobook didn't get re-recorded or anything. So there's just
Oh.
it's a very minor issue, but like
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
How
so
interesting, though.
also
disappearing
that's like
horse.
kind of like chilling. Like
I know.
what
I
happened?
was like, yeah, it's kind of chilling.
What happened to that
Maybe I'll put
horse?
an intentionally disappearing horse in a later book. Stormy
Yeah.
States has intentionally disappearing dogs, but that's just sad.
Oh, God.
Do you prefer to write at midnight or at sunrise?
Sunrise. I am too tired at midnight. My brain's not doing.
I
I used to be like an up all night role player, and then
Mhm.
I hit a certain point, and if I'm writing a book, it is best if I write it like at 5 or 6 in the morning.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel that hard. I feel like I used to be a night owl or whatever, and now I'm like I am strictly mornings. Like I'm usually in bed by like 9:30.
Kids
So,
will do that too, though.
yeah,
So
they will.
yeah.
They will do that. Let's see. Would you rather be trapped in an internal library or a forbidden archive?
What's the difference?
I think the eternal library is supposed to be like always adding books and it never stops. And then the forbidden archive has like hidden secret texts and things.
Mm.
Probably the library,
Mhm.
unless it would be really upsetting getting like always being lost because the stacks
Yeah.
keep expanding.
Forever. You
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
never,
Can't
the
get
pressure
Never
out.
of never
ending.
having a TBR that truly never ended.
Yeah.
You can't ever get out.
Can't ever get
That's
out
my
trapped.
nightmare. It's always just getting bigger and bigger.
That's the scary story right there.
Okay. And the final one is, would you rather live in one of your worlds or would you absolutely never live in one of the worlds you've created?
No. No, no, no. No. Um there is a character of all the characters I've written, there is one character in Death of Jane Lawrence who this is a very weird thing to say, and I'm trying to think of the best way to articulate it because it is technically based on a fanfic I read once. It was Hannibal fanfic where Will is a writer and Hannibal's one of his characters, and then one day Hannibal shows up,
Oh,
like
Is
in
it
real
set back in
life.
time? Like set back in, I'm
I
thinking of a
don't think
different
I
one.
can't remember. There
Okay.
also might be more than one fic with that premise.
Hmm.
Um, but there is a character in Death of Jane Lawrence that would pull that. And
Mm.
like, so like I guess I wouldn't want to live in any of my characters' worlds, but I also wouldn't want to live in this world and have Avdotia show up because that would be
yeah.
worse.
Mhm.
You're like, they're so creepy. That's funny.
I love it.
Imagine
Um,
Hannibal just showing up.
Yeah, yeah, certain characters you don't want to show up and track you down
Yeah,
as a writer.
yeah, for sure. For
it
sure.
just haunt your mind. You're like, oh, they cannot come out.
They're here for vengeance.
Um, so when we like to wrap up the show, we like to do kudos at the end, and we'll start it. We would love for you to participate if you want to. Don't feel pressured
But
though.
no
But
pressure, yeah.
basically, it shoots back to our fan fiction days when you could leave kudos on Fix, and we just say like something we're happy or glad for that happened for the week. But we'll definitely start.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I can go first.
Okay.
Um, First, want to give a kudos and a happy birthday to our friend Jen. Today's her
Whoop, whoop.
birthday, so happy birthday, Jen. And then, of course, thank you so much, Caitlin, for being on our podcast. Like, thank you for rescheduling and taking time out of
Yes.
your
Mhm.
busy day. So we appreciate it. Thank you.
And I want to kudos my friend Tracy, who kind of like inspired this whole thing. And if anyone listening ever needs Handle or X, hit me up because she has given me so many. The limit does not exist with them. It's insane. But thank you. I'm gonna copy Chanel. I was so excited about this when you said I couldn't wait to talk to you and pick your brain and just keep writing your really cool, weird, amazing books. I just feel like they're so different and so well written, and you just like kind of fall into their worlds. And the characters that you write just don't fit into these like boxes, especially like the female characters, the Starving Saints ones I loved. And I've really had a thing this year with female knights. So when I stumbled upon yours, I was like, oh my gosh, just like top of the list with it. So yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, just thank you for coming on tonight. And I know you're busy, and I'm just so excited about all of your work. And thank you so much for taking so much time to chat with us tonight.
Thank you guys. I think I want to give kudos to basically all the fan artists and like fan creators who have, especially with Starving Saints, have just
Yes.
taken it and run.
Mhm.
Mimi Maru is fantastic and is like I feel hashtag blessed. I don't think we're still saying that anymore. It's been I feel old. But basically just I've been very spoiled with all the art I've gotten. And your friend for that rather made of hand-bound version of the Starving Saints, which is how I met her. Um, which I then asked if I commissioned a copy, and she's like, well, how about you just have mine and I'll make myself a new one. And I don't know if she has made herself a new one yet, but I love it.
Wow.
It is on my shelf over there. And I then also commissioned her to make a hard bind of my first novel, The Luminous Dead, which only ever had a paperback release, and it glows in the dark and is super cool. But yeah,
Oh, I
so
didn't know that.
yeah,
Okay, wow,
I
sorry.
try, and whenever I get tagged in like a transformative work of one of my own things, I try and post about it. On Instagram, I use the repost function purely for that. So if you
Mhm.
go to the repost on my Instagram, that's all cool art and stuff. Some of it commissioned, a lot of it gifted, and
Mhm.
all very, very, very cool. Um, I am good. I don't go looking on AO3 for fan fiction of my own work because I
Mhm.
don't want to intrude on fandom spaces, but know that you have my blessing to do whatever weird thing you want. I
Love it.
enjoy Hanagram fan fiction, and I have read my share of Dead Dove Fix.
Mhm.
Have fun.
Run with it.
Love it. I love it. That's
It's
awesome.
amazing.
That is so awesome. Yeah, and like
Mhm.
it's awesome that you're a supporter of like
Mhm.
the artist community and stuff, binding community. So thank you. Yeah.
Yes. And I don't know if you guys can see this. I just want to show it. Speaking of your fan art, I saw this fan art of Starving Saints.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one of the most beautiful things I've seen.
I
Will
didn't
you?
even know, like, I vaguely knew about Mimi Maru, who's the artist.
Mhm.
And like, then I just got tagged in that, and it's absolutely wild. She did a limited print run. I have still to put it up on my wall. She also did a very beautiful picture of Sirvoin and a Death of Jane Lawrence piece. So
Mm.
yeah.
So
That's
incredible.
awesome. That's awesome. Yeah.
I feel very spoiled.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can you tell everyone where they can find you on social media so they can
Yeah.
see you?
I am not super active on social media because the world and
Yeah.
burnout, but you can find me on Instagram at author C Starling and on Blue Sky at CaitlinStarling.com. Those are pretty much the only two places where I am active. Yeah. And also, if you go on, especially on my Instagram, you also get a lot of knitting content. That's sort of the only thing that's keeping the hinges on slightly.
Awesome. Awesome. Love it. Love it.
Love it.
Yay. Well, thank you so much. This is
Thank
great.
Yes.
you.
Thank you so much for coming on, and thanks for listening, everyone. Make sure that you read what you like and have